At the moment, it's none because there's no items in that row. If I move a sword, you can see that once I scroll up to my sword, that the selected item changes to a sword. Welcome back everyone to another inventory tutorial. Today we'll be going over the hotbar and adding that in. This may or may not be the last episode in this series. If you do want to see more, let me know what you want to see in the comments below. With all that said, let's get straight into it. First thing I want to do is fix this annoying bug where if I pick up an item and I right click, it deletes the item in that slot, which is obviously not ideal. So let's fix that up real quick. That's going to be in our end item move single function. We're just not doing a check here that we should be doing. So if it's equal to null, then do this. Else if original slot item is not equal to null, if original slot is equal to null, then false. If original slot dot get item is not equal to null, so there's an item here, and dot get item is not equal to moving slot dot get item. There we go. So if they're not the same, then return false as well. And then sub quantity, etc., etc. Okay, so that's just going to exit this function so we don't do anything else, which means we shouldn't be able to place any items. Let's see how this goes. It worked. Fantastic. Very cool. All right, cool. So now let's add the hotbar. So what I'm going to do for this is firstly create a canvas so I can have, my hotbar slots displayed there. Similar how we did the inventory. Someone brought up something about some, grid. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I haven't messed around with this too much, so I don't know too much about it. That said, if you know about that grid thing in Unity, which I think is just a component, feel free to use it if it's compatible. For the purposes of keeping this inventory simple for beginners, I'm not going to delve too far into that, and I'm just going to make the UI manually, and I think it's a good practice as well. So first off, let's mess around with some UI. So I'm going to duplicate just my first row of slots. And if you're wondering where I got 60 from, it's literally just the width and height. So depending on how wide yours are, you can set the user interface up here as, whatever you want it to be. Our code's going to work very nicely around whatever we set our user interface as. So if I press play now, what we should have is obviously our inventory pane at the top, and we'll have a hotbar slots at the bottom. Currently, they don't do anything. That's fine. What I need to do first thing I'm going to do is make sure that this is scale with screen size and make this 0.5 for my canvas settings. And I also want this to be pixel perfect. There we go. Now, hotbar is not actually going to be underneath our inventory panel. Let me fix that up real quick. This is going to be underneath our inventory, like so. Very cool. Inventory panel. This width and height should probably change to 300. If I press play, I will probably have to resize my slots as well, just a little bit. Okay. Let me set up my user interface, and then I'm going to be right back. Okay, so I am back. I've rearranged my slots and my user interface a little bit, so it works a little bit nicer now. What I'm going to do is make my height of this a little bit smaller. I'll make this 45 and 45. This is just my cursor because resizing my slots made the cursor a little bit too big. I shall also resize my slots here to maybe 50 and okay, cool. So these are my hotbar slots at the bottom here. That's what the player is going to see as the hotbar. It's going to read directly off the last row of our inventory. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this last row down here. Cool. So I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm just going to make this -50. There we go. And in fact, I'll do -60 just so we have this break here. So the logic behind this is I'm going to be able to drag from my inventory slots up here, these 3 rows, into my hotbar, and then whatever is in this hotbar is going to display here automatically. So when you open your inventory, obviously these slots would hide because you don't want the user to think they can click on these ones. That doesn't work. And then when you close your inventory, you display the ones at the bottom here. So, or you'd have some sort of overlay which appears over these hotbar slots when you open the inventory, just to show the user that they can't place something directly here, and that this slot here is in fact their inventory. It is in fact their hotbar. So let's set up some of the logic here. We need to reference these slots and basically just say read after my last this many slots in my inventory. Should be relatively easy to do. I'm going to save my Unity project and go into Visual Studio. Scroll up, we're going to duplicate our slot class list. Where is it? Here, slot class items. I'm going to duplicate that, Control D, and I'm just going to make this slot bar array of hotbar items. Cool. Slot holder, we're going to duplicate as well, and I'm going to make this hotbar slot holder. Cool, now we have those values to set in Unity. So I'm going to go into Unity and set that up real quick as well. If I click on my inventory object, we'll see, let's close starting items. We'll see hotbar slot holder is currently nothing. I shall just duplicate this and put that there. Not duplicate, drag and drop my hotbar object here from the transform parent into there. That should be good to go. Fantastic. Let's head back into Unity and set that up. So in our start method, set all the slots. That's fine. What I need to do is say, so we have, I also need to duplicate this. Yeah. Game object array hotbar slots. Cool. Now we also have to copy these because these are the same as well. These two lines here. In fact, this time we're changing this to hotbar slots equals new game object array to hotbar slots holder.transform.child count, and then we're going to say hotbar items equals new slot class to hotbar slots dot length, and that is our hotbar information set up. So let's close start method. Let's minimize update. Refresh UI. Now we also have to update. So underneath refresh UI, I shall create. So we'll get close moving stuff for now, and we keep that closed. All right, cool. So underneath here, I'm going to create a public void, and I'm going to call this refresh hotbar, which is going to work very simple, similar to our refresh UI, just slightly different. And at the end of refresh UI, I'm going to call refresh hotbar. Now I'm going to copy my entire refresh UI method and paste that into refresh hotbar, because most of this is the same. The only thing I'm changing is saying what for int I equals 0. This should say for int I equals 0, I less than hotbar slots dot length I plus plus hotbar slots, yes, hotbar slots I dot transform the get child list equals items. This should be hotbar items. In fact, thinking about it now, I wrote this code earlier, but I should be able to simplify this if I just say items I. Yeah, dot get item. Hotbar slots I, that should change. That is a mistake there. Okay, cool. Hotbar slots, this equals items I. Items I that get stackable, yes. All right, so I'm going to modify my start method a little bit. I know I said this was done, but this is actually a mistake. So what I have to do, hotbar slot is fine. I don't need a hotbar items at all, because we're going to read directly from our slot class main inventory, so that's fine. Hotbar slots, we need hotbar slots, starting items, then all the slots. That's going to equal null at first. Hotbar slots equals new game object array, and then I have to say for int I 0, I less than hotbar slots dot length. I should be able to say I plus plus. And here, this is what I want to copy. So this should say hotbar slots I equals hotbar slot holder dot transform dot get child I dot game object. Fantastic. That should set all that up. Cool. So if I head into Unity, this should, in theory, work. Okay. So as you can see, it's kind of working. It is copying off our inventory properly. However, it's only copying off our top row here. We wanted to copy off the bottom row. So that's relatively easy to change. All I have to do is modify just one line because our code is so awesome. All I have to do is change it from the index here. So this will depend on how many rows you have on your inventory here. So listen carefully. For me, this is on the 4th row, my first item. So what I can say is for int I equals hotbar slots dot length times the number of rows in your inventory. So for me, times 4. Because we have 6 rows, 6 times 4 will bring us to, wait, 6? What am I on about? 5. 5 times 4. Is that correct? 5 times 3 will bring us here plus 1. Okay. 5 times 3, because that's the number of rows. And then since we want to start at the next row, we say plus 1. Let's give that a go. If it doesn't work, then that's fine. Plus 1 plus hotbar slots dot length. Okay, and then I less than hotbar slots times the number of rows you have plus 1 to start at the next row plus the length so that we can get to the end of the row. I've changed the logic a little bit, so now it doesn't align with my previous code that I had noted down, but that's fine. And we got an error. Not index out of bounds. Saw that one coming. Let's get rid of the plus 1. Still out of bounds. That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, so I figured out why my logic wasn't working here. I'm just a little bit small brain at the moment. So I was reading from I equals this to there. That's fine. However, my items, my inventory items, we're trying to read the data from there. That's fine, but our number of slots in our hotbar isn't equal to that. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. However, this fix is relatively simple. I'm going to change this back to being from I equals 0, I less than hotbar slots dot length. Cool. What I just need to do is every single time we say refer to our items I, so that's here, I need to modify this. So I add hotbar slots dot length times the number of rows, which is 3. And if I modify that, then that will work. But just where it is items I. Don't modify hotbar slots I. There should be in 3 places. 1, 2, 3. Save. Let's go back into Unity and let's see if this works. Okay, so currently it is empty. It is appearing here. So real quick, when I was making my hotbar, what happened was I lost the order. So this wasn't in order of their slots. This is why using a grid comes in handy because it does that automatically for you. If you're setting your user interface up manually, just be aware that your slots should be in the order that you want them to fill up in, like so. And then your hotbar as well. So left to right and then row by row. That will just make your life a lot easier, and it will also fix up any of the discrepancy because our code isn't able to work around that since our backend is completely different to our front end. That's just how it usually is. To make it apply properly, either use a grid or set up your user interface carefully. That said, our hotbar should now be working perfectly. There is currently a bug where if I click away from my inventory, it will stack to that items, but it will set that item stack, if that makes sense. So basically our add function doesn't work. Quite a simple fix. All we have to do is say when we add quantity 1, this should not add quantity 1, this should add quantity slot dot quantity. Sorry, add quantity, not slot.quantity. That wouldn't make much sense. Now, if I move my apples, we add all 9. Okay, cool. That works perfectly. Nice. That's the user interface setup. There is a little bit of functionality we have to set up as well because we don't currently know which slot our user is selecting. So what we want to do is have it so you have a selected item, which is the selected item in that slot. That just returns the item class inside that slot. So quite simple. All I'm going to do is create a selector object. So inside my hotbar, that will be inside my hotbar. No, outside my hotbar, I'm going to create a UI. I'll just create a UI panel. And I'm going to call this selector. Cool. Make sure we move that outside of our hotbar transform. Width and height you can set as however you want. I'm going to make this the same size as my slots, which is about 50. Well, slightly larger than them. Actually, let's make the same size. Why not? 50 by 50. And I'm going to make sure fill center is off. I will make this a little bit higher opacity. And now we have this cool selector object. Very nice. Now we can mess around with this however we want. I'll make this 47 by 47 just so it's slightly bigger. And I'll make it gold because it looks cool. Now we need some code. In our update function, we're going to make it so our scroll wheel can use the selected slot. So we need two new variables. One is a serialized field, private int selected slot index equals 0, and then another one is a public. This is public because we probably want to access it from other scripts, and it's going to be an item class selected item. We also need a serialized field, private game object, and this is going to be hotbar selector, like that. Cool. Now in update, I need to set the position of my hotbar selector. So hotbar selector dot transform dot position equals hotbar slots selected slot index dot transform dot position, like so. That will be fine. Now I just need to add the functionality for our scroll wheel to move. So if input dot get axis, what's the axis called? I think it's mouse scroll wheel, like that. We can double check that in just a sec. This should be if it's greater than 0, then we are scrolling up, in which case we want to say selected slot index plus plus. Else, obviously, else if it's less than 0, then we're scrolling down and select the slot index minus, and then we update our slot position. That's fine. Let me double check our input axis for our scroll wheel. So I'm going to check that in my project settings. So if I go to edit, project settings, and go to the input tab down here, open up axis, mouse scroll wheel. Be careful of the caps here. I'm just going to copy this as is and paste that into my code, like so. That's cool. One issue is that I'm going to change this to plus equals 1. Why? Because we need to clamp this. So what I can do is say mathf dot clamp between selected slot index selected slot index plus 1. I'm going to clamp it between 0 and hotbar slots dot length. Cool. And I'm going to duplicate that and paste that here and make sure this is -1. Very nice. So now let's go into Unity. We can close our project settings here. click on my inventory object, and selected slot index will be 0. I need to set my hotbar selector. So drag selector into there, press play. And you can see that as I'm scrolling, we get an error. Index out of bounds of the array because hotbar slot is this. Hotbar slots dot length -1 should be the top end. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's give that another go. As I'm moving my selector, it moves from slot to slot. Very nice. Now I just need to set one last thing, and that's selected item equals, and this is going to equal, it's going to equal, where is our refresh hotbar function? Here. Items I, so it's going to equal literally this dot get item, this entire bit here. Again, make sure this 3 is replaced by the number of rows in your inventory before the hotbar row. So this is my hotbar row. There's 3 rows before it. That's where the 3 comes from. Everything apart from that should be fine. I'm getting an error here because this I should be selected, selected slot index plus hotbar slots this times 3. Okay, let's press play. Now selected item should change. If it doesn't, then your code doesn't work. So at the moment, it's none because there's no items in that row. If I move a sword, you can see that once I scroll up to my sword, that the selected item changes to a sword. Now that selected item you can access from any script, and you can do whatever you want with it. So you can access the amount of damage it does, you can access its image, access its name, anything, absolutely anything. You can set a name for it if you want, do whatever you want, because our code is set up in a way that lets you essentially access the data of that item as is, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And if you wanted to access the whole slot as is, you can change it to a slot class and then pass in the slot class instead of just the item, which means you'd get rid of .getItem, and that's it. So again, quite robust code. But yeah, that said, if you want to see more of this, make sure you like and subscribe. Let me know what else you guys want to see in this series. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care and peace.